Great. Looks like we're ready. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. My name is Jessica from Housing Court Answers. I'm very excited to present our wonderful presenters today for this workshop about using eCourts and NYSCEF to look up cases and look at court documents for tenants that are in housing court. So today we have Monique, our office manager, and Nipa, our hotline specialist, going to give our presentation about eCourts and NYSCEF. Please, during the presentation, if you can stay muted so that we don't have any distractions. We'll be sharing our screen today. If we're going through the presentation, you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box and we'll be keeping track. At the end of each section, we'll be answering questions before we move on to the next one. So then after the first section on eCourts, we'll take a little 5-minute break and then we'll come back and finish up the section on NYSCEF. We should be done by 5 o'clock. And that sounds good. Just a reminder that any questions should be general question. We can't answer question about personal cases or specifics about something that's happening in housing court. And reminder that we are not lawyers, so remember that. Yep. And then the last announcement I have is next week we have 2 trainings coming up about FEPs and city FEPs. So look out for our website for registration information on that. Now I would like to turn it over to Monique, our office manager, to start us off. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jess. Welcome, everyone. So as Jessica stated, we're going to be discussing eCourts and NYSCEF. We're going to start off, I'm going to be doing the eCourts portion. So for starters, what is eCourts? eCourts contains cases from all of the courts in New York State, and today we'll be focusing on housing court cases. Web Civil Local is the specific tab that can be used to determine if you have a court date scheduled for any civil case, such as non-payment, holdover, or an HP action case. You would use the Web Civil Supreme tab to look up any Supreme Court cases, which you'll see shortly. So here's the link that we would use to get to eCourts to do the search. You can search by index number or by the party search, which would be the name. So let's get that open. So this is the main page here. As you see, there are all types of civil cases. We will be using Web Civil Local to search for housing court cases. This is where you would search for Supreme Court here. Once you click on Web Civil Local, it would take you to the options of the type of search you want to do. So we'll be starting with the index search. You get this recaptcha here for security purposes. Let's do that. Which can be annoying, and sometimes you have to do it more than once. So here in the index search, you would put the index number as it's listed on the court documents. So the first drop down here indicates the type of case you're searching for. For housing court cases between landlords and tenants, it will always be LT. You would enter the 6-digit index number here. We'll just make something up for now. The year, the last 2 digits of the year would go here. That would be on the court documents. And then the last drop down would be the county the case was filed in. So we would select Bronx if it was a Bronx case. Now, we went over these 2 items. It's important to remember with the county that Manhattan, it could be NY or it could be HA because of the Harlem court cases. Even though the Harlem court is closed, there are still Harlem cases being filed. So it's important to make sure you look at what is on the court documents before you enter it and do a search. Now, if there's a court date scheduled, you'll be led to this page here, and it'll show you a snapshot of all the hearing information. You see the index number is here, which we redacted a portion of it for privacy. It lets you know who the defendant is, which is the tenant, who the plaintiff is, who started the case, the appearance date. So once you click on the index number, it'll bring you to this page. And you can see here the type of case, still who sued who. If there are attorneys for the case, usually for the landlord always has an attorney. So you'll see the attorney for the petitioner listed here. And you'll see here the defendant, the tenants, they don't have representation. So you don't see any info there. Now, if you select show all appearances here, it'll bring you to this screen. Bear with me a moment. And yeah, so right here, you click on show all appearances. It'll actually bring you to the next screen and you'll be able to see any upcoming or previous court dates. So you'll see this person's first court date was July 12th. It was adjourned to September 19th. That one was rescheduled to November 21st. It also tells you who the judge is. And if there is no court date, once you enter the index number, you'll be led here where it says no cases filed. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a court case against you. It just means that there's nothing scheduled at this time, possibly. So just keep that in mind. So we'll take a few questions. That was a short one on eCourts. Nancy is monitoring the chat if there are any questions about eCourts before we take a quick break and move on to NYSCEF. Nancy, any questions?
No, not at the moment. There was one question that was just if this was pertaining to tenants or only advocates, and it was answered on the chat.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick break just to switch out, and we'll come back and start the NYSCEF portion of the training.
And we'll come back at 3:45.
3:45? Okay. And Nipa, my colleague, will be giving the info on NYSCEF.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. My name is Nipa. I am a hotline specialist at Housing Court Answers. So I will be doing the NYSCEF part of the training. I'm just going to give everybody 1 more minute to come back. Okay, so now that we're gonna get started with the NYSCEF training, just want to clarify if everybody can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen, Nipa.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
what is NYSCEF? NYSCEF is a program that's used to view documents that have been filed for a court case. NYSCEF also permits the filing of legal papers by electronic means. Existing cases with hard copy filings that are eligible for e-filings can also be converted to NYSCEF. So what does that mean? Basically, NYSCEF is a program where you can look online for any cases that have been filed electronically. So you can look up documents that have been filed and any cases that were filed that were not filed electronically, they have the options to be converted so that they can be electronically viewed. So how do you get to NYSCEF? So this is the link for NYSCEF, and again, the presentation will be shared on our website after, but this is the link for NYSCEF, and I'm going to open the link. And I'm going to share the link if you want to bookmark it for yourself. But also my Nancy has also shared the link. I just want to make sure that everybody can see the NYSCEF screen. Can we all see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the homepage for NYSCEF when you click on the link. So NYSCEF, it's for all types of, it's a statewide system. So it says New York State Unified Court System. So there's different type of cases that can be filed here. So on the sidebar, you see civil, court, criminal, and then some people have accounts, but you don't need an account to access your specific case that you're looking for. So what you do when you reach the homepage is you go down and you search as a guest. For a guest, you don't have to create a password or anything like that. You just click search as a guest. And then they're going to make you verify that you're not a robot and then you're going to get to this page. So this is the page that we're going to be concerned with. We don't care about any of these other pages. We just want to get to the main page, which allows us to search for cases. So I'm going to go back now. So like I said, I highlighted where search as a guest. So if you're confused, so when you get to that page, there are 2 different ways to search for a housing court case. We're only focusing on housing court cases, even though NYSCEF is used for other types of cases. So how do you search for a case? There are 2 means of searching for cases that we're going to focus on. You can either search by a name or a case identifier. So searching for a name and you want to click the tab that you're going to be using. So if you want to search by the name, you need to click the name tab. It's pre-default to the case identifier. On the case identifier part, you want to see it's going to ask for the index number. The index number is how court cases are identified. Now, if you're searching by the index number, the index number is usually located on the top right-hand corner of all court documents. Sometimes it's left out for whatever reason, but you can check the next page, and it's a 6-digit number. So I'm gonna go back to the NYSCEF. So when you when you're trying to search for an index number, you'll see 3 options. It'll say CV, LT, or TS. We want to focus on LT. LT stands for landlord tenant. So that's the type of cases that we want to search for. CV stands for civil, and TS is another type of court, but we're focusing on housing court, so we pick LT. And then, sorry, let me go back to slideshow. So then you put LT and you put a 6-digit number, that's the index number, and then the year. So this part, sometimes it's written as 2021, 2019. This indicates the year that the case was filed. You only put the last 2 digits. Now, sometimes people have cases with the index number where it'll just say 392, even though it's a 6-digit number. It always has to be a 6-digit number. So if your case just says 392, you would just put 000392. And then you would pick, remember, there are 5 different courthouses. Well, 6, because Harlem is its own court. So you want to pick the borough that you live in. So just to, again, reiterate, BX is Bronx, HA is Harlem, KI is Brooklyn. So that's the thing. It doesn't always coordinate with like the borough name, but KI stands for Kings County, which is Brooklyn. Manhattan is NY. I think a lot of people, sometimes will just put New York, NY as for New York, but NY refers to Manhattan. QU, Queens, and Staten Island is RI, so Richmond County. So this represents the county that it was filed in, but this is, you would put in the borough that you're filed in, you put in. So sometimes, like, I just want to verify, you put in the borough that the case was filed in. So sometimes people move but still have a case pending. You want to put the borough that the case was filed against you for. So if you move to Staten Island, but the case was filed against an apartment that's in Queens, you need to put Queens. And then, so that's the way to search for using the index number. Now, if you want to search by name, let's say you get the paperwork and there's no index number in, which does happen sometimes, or you're not able to find it, you want to search by the name. Now, the name, you click on the name tab. You need to put the name exactly how it appears on the court case. So sometimes there's a misspelling on the court case filing of the name. You put in exactly how it's misspelled, because that's how you're going to be able to search for it. So look at the paperwork, make sure that, it's spelled the way you spell it. If it's not the way you spell it, just put it how it appears on the paperwork, not how you spell it. Now, when you search for a name, there's a couple of options to be able to, especially if you have like a common name, there's a couple of options to reduce the search results. So if I put in Jane Doe, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get thousands of results. So there's ways to reduce the search results. So if you know the county, so again, the county is what borough the apartment or the apartment is listed in, you can drop down and pick Kings County. Now I'm going to switch screens. There is another option. So sometimes, yeah, they make you verify twice if you've been inactive for a while. So that's just a thing. So if I put Jane Doe And then I come back down, I put the type of county. So let's say, you know, and you can just click K so you don't have to, it drops down to the K. There's also a search option for case type. Case type refers to the type of case. So let's do something. Let's do Jane Doe. And we get search results. We're going to get, you know, a couple of results. But we want to search for housing court cases. So we need to reduce our results because otherwise this is just going to search for all types of cases, Supreme Court, civil court, things like that. We want to put in the case type. So you can just press L on the keyboard and then it brings you to landlord and tenant. Because remember, we are only focusing on housing search cases. So if you see right here, you can look up guardianship cases, commercial cases, contract, consumer debt. So you go down to L and you look at anything that says landlord and tenant. The only issue with this is that you see the options for landlord and tenant. You have to know the exact type of specific case. So there's, even within landlord tenant court, there's different types of cases. So you have like a holdover case, a non-payment case, and an alleged illegal lockout. But it's not just putting in a holdover, non-payment. You can see that for holdover, there's two types of holdover or holdover illegal activity. And if you know the specific type of case that's filed, then you can click it. But sometimes that means that you won't get any search results, or it'll pop up that there's no, you know, results found. So if that happens, then at that point, what you would like to do is you don't need to put in the type of case. Just put in the county that you found. So Kings County. When you do a name search result, you have to put in both the first and the last name. If I try to put in just using Jane, it could, but usually it doesn't. But then you have a lot more. Now, if you're putting in an part, you can also search using your management's name. So if we want to put in a management, you can put Universal Heights Management, LLC. That can give you, remember, if it's especially a bigger management, you'll get a lot more results. So you also maybe want to put down the type of county, if they own property throughout the city. But also if you want to search using an attorney, then you have to put in the first and last name. So let's put Jessica. So you cannot enter a business organ's name for attorney name search. So they make you put in two separate names. So this first and last name is for only the tenant, or if it's like a smaller landlord, but if you put party, business organization, that's usually your management, because most managements are LLCs. So instead of an individual, so that's when you would want to use the party. Or if it's an attorney, you know, like, you know, the name of the landlord's attorney or your own attorney, and you want to search using this. There's two other options here, but that's outside the scope of our training. It's new cases. It will just show you all the cases that's filed. Again, remember, this is a statewide filing system. So, and it's just going to give you all the results. But again, that's outside of the scope of our training. So we want to focus on finding housing court cases. All right, sorry about the back and forth. There's just no way to prevent that. Okay, so we're done with how to search for a name and a case identifier. Again, when you are searching for a case, let's say you searched for Jessica Smith, this is the pay, and you didn't put in the type of county or anything like that, you will get search results that have all types of cases with Jessica Smith in it. What you want to focus on is the landlord tenant cases. So you want to look for something that says LT in front. So if you look at this, it says pre-RJI, and it doesn't say LT in front. That's not the type of case that we want to focus on. It says EF 525. And here you can get a little bit of information about the case. So you can see this is a torts case. It's in Nassau County. Supreme Court, that's not the case we're looking for. This is a matrimonial uncontested case. That's not a case we're looking for. But here, we can just get basic information. Even on this page, we can look at landlord and we can see landlord and tenant and the type of case it is, non-payment. Also, we see a Kings County civil, so it's filed in Brooklyn. So that this page in itself just also gives us a little bit of information, but make sure right here, the first thing you see is LT when we're looking for landlord tenant cases in housing court. Now, if you search for a case and you don't get any, if there's no cases found, and remember, these cases have to be electronically filed. So if you search for a case and you don't, and have not been electronically filed, that means you will not get a result. Or sometimes maybe you don't have the proper index number. This is the result you're going to get. So case results, no cases found. But this does not mean you don't have a case. So I want to make that very clear. Just because it's not in NYSCEF does not mean that you don't have a case. The best way to know if you have a case, if you receive court papers, don't ignore it. You can check with housing court, call housing court directly to see if there's a case been filed against you, if you can't find it. But just want to make it very clear, just because the case is not found in NYSCEF does not mean that you do not have a court case, because these cases also have to be uploaded. So sometimes they're not uploaded as quick as they come in. So you do have to give it a little bit of time. Now, what we're going to go into is the type of documents. So let's say you know the index number and you search the index number and you're going to get to this page. So right here, just on this page, we can see a little bit of information. We see the petitioner is Universal Heights 18 LLC. So that's the petitioner, and then versus John Doe, who is the tenant. This is a landlord-tenant case. It's a holdover. A holdover is a type of case in which the landlord wants you out of the apartment, regardless of rent is paid or not. So this is the first page that we'll get. And you can see, and again, it's filed in Bronx County Housing Court. So there's a list of documents. So when you go to documents list, that's the first tab. When you click on the actual case, you're going to see a list of documents that have been filed. This is generally what it looks like. Not every case is going to be as extensive as this, but these documents are filed in the order. It's basically the order that they were received. So this is the petition. It was filed 5/18. Then a warrant requisition was filed. So 7/22. So it does go in order, and you can click on each one. The petition is usually the first document that's filed. And it tells you in the title, like what exactly it is. Couple of interesting things I want to point out. So number 9, affidavit, non-military, filed by marshal. So you can see right here, even get the information for the marshal, and then you can just run a search name for the marshal. But there's also other ways. Maybe there are key terms you want to watch out for, like warrant requisition, failure to answer, judgment of possession. Those are key things you want to kind of just watch out for. Date of filing. So somebody says, I got a court date on, I just got my papers served today, and let's pretend we're in like June 15th, but on here it says it was filed 5/18. Remember, the date of filing is not going to match up with the date that they were served. So the filing date is usually going to be different. So those are things that you can just verify and let them know, okay, this date was filed on 5/18. That's not the date you're necessarily served. So yeah, so just information you can just get simply from looking here. Now, remember when we first go to the homepage where we search the case result and we get to the case, there's 3 different tabs. So document list, case detail, court notices. Court notices is usually if there's like a court date. Now case detail, when we get to the case detail, the case detail can be used to see if there's any representation for either party has. So right here, it'll have the property address also. And then right here, it'll say the petitioner, and it will tell you the landlord in this case, their attorney. It doesn't say their contact information, but there are ways to get like their contact information, you know, Google search results, but then there's other documents where you can look for their contact information for the attorneys. It'll also give you the respondent, which is usually the tenant. Sometimes, you know, the tenant suing the landlord, so that may be different. So, but you see, the one thing I want to point out is that on this specific case, you see that there's multiple tenants in this specific case. However, not everybody has representation. So in this case, the first tenant is represented by New York Legal Assistance Group, and it tells you the name of the specific attorney. But the other tenants, they don't have that written on there. The reason why is that generally it's very nuanced. So some cases, it's only depending on the type of case and the household composition. If there's like roommates or if it's a family, things like that, there's a conflict interest. The attorney is only representing one specific person. Or if they're representing the entire household, that could be, you may have to like just speak to the tenant like, hey, are you guys both being represented? But this is an indicator that only one party is being represented. Now, so now we're going to go into documents. So that you can find on NYSCEF. So this is a holdover petition. So how do you know? Again, right here, you notice the LT and the index. So again, this is one of the things I was talking about. Sometimes the LT and the index, it's blank. So you may need to search with your name. So this is the notice of petition. And then it says underneath holdover, that tells you the type of case it is. And then it gives you the petitioner's address. And so right here, the petitioner's address is the landlord's address, because this is a case that the landlord filed against you. So, and then right here, it'll have the address of the apartment. Yeah, so that's how you know it's a holdover. Now, a non-payment petition, it looks a little bit different because non-payment cases are about rent that has to be paid. And if you pay the rent, you get to stay, things like that. So non-payment, it'll say right here, it'll have, generally it's a little bit more thorough. It'll have the amount that they're suing you for. And sometimes it'll have like multiple, like right here, it'll have like multiple tenants or things like that. Yeah. So the address. So right here, this just gives you the details about the type of case. Also right here, number 7, it's not always listed directly like that, but it also gives you information about the type of apartment it is. So if it's a rent stabilized apartment, or if it's a subsidized apartment, so Section 8, or if it's not, it's an unregulated apartment. So that just does give you a little bit of information about the type of apartments it is, because sometimes, a lot of times, our clients or the tenants themselves don't know the type of apartment. But this generally will give you a little bit of information as to what the landlord is claiming is the type of apartment it is. Then we're going to go to the affidavit of service. The affidavit of service is a very helpful document. Again, we go back to where the tenants will see that the case was filed on a certain date. The affidavit of service tells you how exactly the landlord attempted to serve the tenant. So right here, it'll say affidavit of services, and then it's very detailed. So different types. So remember, the affidavit of service, you can be serviced by either a process server or a third party who has no vested interest in the case. So this right here will tell you if it was the actual process server. So Kenco Processing Services, who the person is. And then this is a more thorough type of like service. Just because it was a process server, they keep very good record keeping notes. They tell you how they served. So right here, they'll check off. They'll check off how they served it. So they're saying that they actually delivered it to someone in person. And then they also actually mailed it out. and then they tell you the date. So this is help. And then right here, they give a description of who exactly they served it to. So very helpful information. So sometimes, like if it's served to like the teenager and the parent is like, I never got the document. And then right here, you can look at it and you can be like, well, does this sound like someone who lives in the apartment, or on this date, was anybody like in your home on this date that describes it? So just to dig a little deeper, just to see if like they were actually served before they say they never got the documents or anything like that. And this is pretty helpful because you can take the date that they claim that they were served, and then remember, if it's a non-payment case, they have 10 days to respond. So go from the next day after the date that they claim they mailed it out or that they were served. So this is a pretty helpful piece of information. This is a document for a judgment. So right here, I'll say landlord and tenant judgment. This is basically, you can find out if there was a money judgment that was issued against you, or if it's just a possessory judgment. So right here, you would just have to be, so right here, the possession of the premises, said properties further described as all rooms. So right here, to be a words petitioner along with a monetary judgment. So in this specific case, it shows that both basically the landlord was giving possession of not only the apartment, but also there's a money judgment issued against you. So sometimes people want to know, like, I'm going to be evicted, but do I also have a money judgment? Or maybe it's the reverse, it's just a money judgment, but the landlord can't actually evict you. So that's pretty important information, how much they would owe. And then it'll also right here say information, the earliest date upon which execution may occur is 5:30, things like that. But this is not the marshal's notice. I want to make it clear. This is the judgment that the judge issues or the courts issue, but this is not the marshal's notice. So this is a stipulation. So a stipulation is basically an agreement between both parties, usually the landlord and the tenant. So this is one that was done where both parties had a representation. So it's printed out and it'll give you all the details. So sometimes people are confused about the stipulation. So you can look it up and then explain it to them, and it tells them all the things they agree to, whether there's repairs to be made, if they owe money, what's the deadline, if there are any other conditions of the apartment. Now this is great because this is printed out, but usually if there's one party who doesn't have representation, usually what a stipulation looks like is this. It's a handwritten one. This is not that bad in terms of writing. I've seen stipulations where you basically have to, try to like get 2 or 3 people to figure out what the writing says. So this is more common of what you see when there's no representation on both sides. But that's not always like, even if 2 people have attorneys, they can just like write it, so yeah, so it's not, it'll say stipulation of settlement, and then of all the conditions that you agreed to. But again, yeah, just have to really look through it just sometimes to see like what exactly it's saying, because unfortunately, having like legible handwriting is not a legal requirement, unfortunately. But yeah, but you see the judge's signature, so the judge does sign off on the stipulation. So otherwise it is the legal order. Remember here, there's like a stamp and stuff, and then both parties also sign off on it. This is an example of an order to show cause. So order to show cause is usually filed to put a stop to an eviction or to put the case back on the calendar. And you can see 2 types of order to show cause. Usually it's a proposed order to show cause, which is generally what a party files, and then the approved one. So there's 2 pages usually to an order to show cause. The first is the this is the approved, and there's different types of order to show causes also. So order to show cause to vacate inquest judgment. There's order to show cause for a missed court. So this right here tells you the type of order to show cause. And then this right here will tell you, and it's very important. Sometimes tenants, it's specifically more, they don't realize that like they filed the order to show cause, especially with an eviction, and they don't realize they have to come back. Usually that's not the case, but once in a while it does happen. So right here, it'll tell you the date they're supposed to come back. And then right here, it tells specifically for an order to show cause, it tells them like how they have to serve either the marshal, the other side, and then the day. So they need to watch out for this day, because if they don't follow this day, then there could be like, unfortunately, consequences. Also, it has the marshals. If it's to stop a marshal, it has the marshal's information right here. If it's denied, it'll say denied, generally, and it'll say like why. Again, that writing is not necessarily always like the best. So hopefully you get like this is pretty legible, I think. So hopefully you get something like this. And then this is the second part of the order to show cause. This is pretty helpful, especially because this is what the tenant generally fills out, or even like a landlord. And again, this sometimes like looking at the order to show cause, especially if it was denied, you can see exactly what the tenant or the other party wrote and why they were denied. So and there's specific places that they have to initial, so you can go through the form with the tenant or the landlord to find out maybe what part were they missing, because sometimes like unless you work within the system, these can be confusing forms and stuff like that for the general population. So yeah, so and then it states the date. Now, very important thing right here, this number right here tells you the number of times an order to show cause has been requested. It's not the number of times that an order to show cause has been approved or denied. It's just that how many times you filed a request for an order to show cause. And again, right here, it'll say the types of order to show causes. So there are different types of order to show causes, if anybody was not aware. So when you go into court, like just make sure you're getting the proper order to show cause form. Now, sometimes you have something called a notice of motion. A notice of motion. This is a request for a court date. So sometimes people get this, and right here, you'll see that there's a court date, and people get confused and think that that's a scheduled court date. That is not a scheduled court date. That is a request for a court date. So the courts have to see that date is available. So either party can make a notice of motion. So if the tenant gets any document, it doesn't mean ignore it. It just means this is not the scheduled court date. They're going to get a separate document and stating that an actual court date has been scheduled. So notice of motion is a request for a court date. So you just want to be, if anybody gets that, sometimes it'll be blank that date. So that may be a little bit confusing, but again, this is usually when it says a date, that means that's the earliest date that they're requesting. So or the specific language, or as soon as counsel can be heard for an order, and it tells them, it says exactly why they're requesting a court date. So in this case, entering a default judgment of possession. But this is an indication. Well, there's two indications. It says notice of motion, and then remember, court dates will have specific times, parts that you'll know exactly where to go. This will say on June 13, 2022. It doesn't even give a time, or as soon as counsel can be heard for an order. So that's pretty helpful information. And I'll say who filed it. So in this case, it was attorneys for the petitioner. Now, this is a warrant requisition. So a warrant requisition is the request a marshal makes to the courts to proceed with an eviction. This is not the marshal's notice. This is the permission that the marshal is requesting to the courts to proceed with the eviction, but it does have the marshal's information. So right here, it'll say warrant requisition, the specific marshal, along with their fax number, along with the telephone number, where they're located. But again, this is not a marshal's notice. The tenant still has to be served. So that's like the documents, a lot of the documents that you can see in a NYSCEF. There's other documents you may see, but those are the main ones that you generally will see. And again, remember NYSCEF, it depends on how quickly things are being uploaded. A document may be missing, but that doesn't mean it's not part of the case. It just means it hasn't been uploaded. Now, some landlords will file eviction cases in Supreme Court, as certain type of cases cannot be handled by housing court. Usually, divorce, when there's like children who've grown up involved, so housing court may determine that that's not a case that can be handled by housing court, but it depends, you know. Sometimes people just go directly to Supreme Court. So in Supreme Court, there can be evictions, usually. So, and a type of eviction in Supreme Court is called an ejectment action. But Supreme Court cases have very different procedures than housing court. So you want to be very careful about the type of case that's been filed against you. So again, you can search for a Supreme Court case in a NYSCEF. So what you need to do is when you put in the case, you put in the index number. So remember, when it's a housing court, when you're dealing with housing court specifically, you only put in the last 2 digits of the year. When it's a Supreme Court case, you need to put in the full digits of the year. But you can also search by a name. Now, this is what when a case has been filed against you in Supreme Court, this is what it looks like. So it'll say right here, Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of Queens. I want to go back just a little bit. So you see how right here it says Supreme Court. Usually, sometimes tenants will get confused. If you go to the petition for a holdover or a non-payment case, it'll say Civil Court of the New York County of Kings, but it will say housing court. So that's the difference. When you go to, and there's also regular civil court, but it will say housing. And again, the LT is the indicator that it's been filed in housing court. This will say Supreme Court in the County of Queens. Again, very different procedures. We usually don't deal with Supreme Court cases. So you want to follow up. You need to follow up with probably the Supreme Court about what next steps you can take. So there are very important things to remember. Just because a case has not been filed in NYSCEF does not mean, just because it's not been found in NYSCEF does not mean a case has not been filed. Because remember, you have to file it electronically, or it has to be converted from a hard copy to electronically in order for it to appear in NYSCEF. A lot of times tenants who file cases against a landlord for like repairs, or it's a small landlord who owns a 1 to 3 family house, they usually sometimes don't have lawyers, or they don't know how to do the electronic processing. And so therefore those cases may not be found in the system. Again, like it depends on how quickly they are being uploaded. And again, a notice of eviction, this is a marshal's document. It's usually not uploaded into NYSCEF, but a warrant requisition is not the same thing as the marshal's document. The marshal's document will have the shield on it, and it'll say notice of eviction. Warrant requisition, because remember, like we'll say warrant requisition, we'll say warrant requisition right here. A notice of eviction will say notice of eviction. But it does have, the warrant requisition does have the marshal's information on it. Yeah, so that's the end of the presentation. So now we can take questions if anybody has.
Yes, there were 2 questions, Nipa.
Okay.
The first question was, the most common surname is Rodriguez, about 75,775 total, 8%. How would you search someone by a common name?
Right. So there's an example of a common name. So let me go back to the NYSCEF page, and then we're gonna do Jessica Smith as like, that's also a common name. So you do Jessica Smith right here. And if you are searching for Rodriguez, right? You want to put down the county they're in. So you go to county. So Jessica Smith lives in Kings County. So let's run a search, and then we don't have too many results for Jessica Smith. So if you wanted to do a Rodriguez, let's see. What is usually a first name? Let's see. Remember the county Kings. Usually it doesn't let you search for so it needs to have a first name. So Rodriguez is usually a last name. So let's say. So right here, we're going to get, so remember the things we're looking for is you want to look, what is the type of case? We're focusing on housing. So you want to look for an LT. So you can, case type, do you know what date it was filed? You can filter it or put it in order by the type, the date that it was filed, the type of court it was filed. So if you click your court, you sort, it's going to sort by the type of case. So right here, the first one it says is landlord and tenant. The second are torts. And that's in Kings County. The third is contract. If you want to know, you can sort by the oldest to the newest. So if you know the date, so right here, 2022, 2015, 2019, things like that. So are there ways to like filter the search results? And then if it's still too many results, remember, you can go down to case type and then put in that specific type of case. But again, this is not a fail-proof system. So you need to know the specific type of case that was filed. The only type is that really, that doesn't have to, is a non-payment case. So it's more than one. So then we get right here to one specific search result just by reducing it. But again, I know there's more than one Rodriguez non-payment in the Kings County, so that may, for some reason, not produce as much results. So then you want to go down to Kings, and then you just want to put Kings, and then you need to search through to see what are the types of LT cases. Any other questions?
The second question that came in was, is this system or this database also where landlords will go before they rent an apartment to you?
So there's different type of tenant screenings systems. If there is a case that's been filed against you and the landlord knows how to run the search result, I'm pretty sure they can. This could be one of the many tenant screening systems they use, but there are so many of, databases out there. There's like private run databases if you're looking for like background checking sites and things like that, but this is one of them, unfortunately. But remember, in New York City, simply just being in housing court is not enough of a reason to not rent to you, but they can. Does it leave them like a trace or anything that, like if you're running as guest, does it leave a trace? No, unfortunately not.
And then someone also did mention, Nipa, that you had Rodriguez as the first name, and maybe that's why
Yeah. So we need a first name before they allow us to search. So
we can
I
try
don't know.
Josh maybe.
Yeah. So right here, so let's do Josh Rodriguez. So again, that produces much more results. So if we want to condense it and filter down, we need to know. So maybe Josh lives in Queens. So we want to put Queens County let's see what are the results that we get. Now we don't get any results. Let's try. I'm gonna give another example. So let's do Jane. Let's do John Doe. So this is a good example. So you see we have 5 pages of John Doe and it's all different type of cases. So what you want to do is we already put in Queens, right? So we still got 5 different search results. So what you do right here is you want to go down and again, let's do John Doe has a holdover case. So now we still have a lot of cases. So John Doe, do we know the year that it was filed? So let's say we're looking for a case that was filed in 2020. So oldest to newest, no, let's do newest to oldest because, well, 2020. What is the name of the management? So, you can look right here because it will be against a John Doe. And this is most likely cases that have multiple tenants. So so usually the first name that they present is only the main tenant or the first name on the document, but it'll have more than one. Like once you go in there, I don't want to point out like any specific cases, so I'm not going to go into the person's. I know this public document, but I don't want to specify anyone. But if you know the name of your management, so, maybe Raymond Harvey is your management. Also the type of case, the holdover, what county is it? It's in Queens County. So just, like we can look through all the cases in 2020, case status. So that's another way. Where is the case at? Is it in the beginning stages? Things like that. Case type. But remember, we already did case type. So those are ways to search for a document. So you do have to have some information about, your tenant or just the type of case, where it was filed, what year it was filed, potentially. But generally, just knowing the year and the type of case and also maybe your management's, that'll help you reduce down. So if you know your management, then you can search using your management. Any other questions?
There is one more question that came in, and it's from Eli. Physical files have a 2-sided jacket that sometimes contains notations that can prove helpful. Is there anything, and sorry if there's background noise, that can prove helpful? Is there anything analogous when a file is electronic? And if so, can we get access to it?
So I'm not too sure of what.
Yeah, I can, for all cases, any type of documentation that should be that's entered into the case should be entered electronically if the case is moving and has been approved via NYSCEF. So all those should be, but we do understand that there is a backlog at times within the courts, and so there may be a delay in regards to some documents being entered for certain cases. And Nipa, if you want to add on to that.
Yeah, so again, like it's just like reiterating that like sometimes, that delay is just like a human, like capacity issue. You just have to wait for them to file it, just like I had one case today where it was filed like on eCourts, because remember eCourts only tells you if you have a court date. It was filed in eCourts and you can see it, but it was not electronically uploaded, even though the tenant is seeing that they got paperwork saying it was electronically filed. So it's just, you just have to wait it out a bit. I mean, you can go down to the courthouse to see if you can get access, but sometimes it's just like a lack of capacity issue.
Okay, and then we got some more comments on there. Let's see, 1 second. So the last one was, just going from in order, can someone search for how many tenants are in court without legal representation? And the context is that many of the tenants coming into their office are appearing in court without representation, even though they qualify. And can it be used as a defense issue in court? There is an article that recently came out that provides some numbers in regards to on how many tenants are without representation, and we can drop that in the link. There is, part of the Office of Court Administration, they are moving as pre-pandemic, which is causing a capacity issue for attorneys. So that is what is currently happening. The main thing here is to ensure that tenants appear for their first court date after their answer, and NEPA can expand on that last part I mentioned.
Yeah, so again, so can it be used as a defense issue? That's more of legal advice. We're not lawyers. We really can't, but I mean, court cases are going forward regardless of whether you have an attorney or not. The main gist of this training is to be able to search for court documents and find out ways to access your court case if you don't have access to the physical documents. And again, like you earlier in the presentation, we discussed how to search for a court case on eCourts, and eCourts, I guess the website is acting up right now. But mainly using eCourts to see if you have a court date. So you put in the index number or your name, and then it'll tell you when exactly you have a court date. So just remember going here, index search, putting in the index number, and then making sure that you are able to know when your scheduled court hearing is.
And the next question that came in was from Erica. When a housing case is brought to Supreme Court, is there a specific guidance recommended to assist tenants?
So we don't work with Supreme Court, where more of our knowledge is about housing court, and the guidance would be don't ignore it. Don't ignore the court documents. There's usually with Supreme Court, there's something called a summons. So it'll tell you about 30 days or some things. You need to go down to usually the physical courthouse, and we can put in the I don't know if you can put in the chat, Nancy, like the help desk for the Supreme Court, contact them about how to proceed forward, because they're
Yes.
very housing court is a very summary proceedings type of court. Supreme Court, there's a lot of different, it's more about like paperwork being filed and things like that, but again, it's very different proceedings, so we don't want to give any incorrect information about how to respond or things like that, and then it would affect your case badly. But I get the gist of it is, if you get anything that says court, don't ignore it, because ignoring could result in a default judgment against you, and that can unfortunately lead to like an eviction. So you don't want to ignore court papers no matter where it's from.
And an important note that NEPA mentioned was that each case in housing court, there's specific timelines in terms of when to respond, and as well with the Supreme Court. Our experience with a quick view of those documents, it is 30 days, but you should be very, look at those documents very specifically to know how much time you have. The following question is, let's see. With electronic filing, does judge or the court attorney maintain his or her notes? They maintain his or her notes in the past would have been put in the file jacket, and how do we access that somehow?
I don't know if you want to take on this question, Nancy.
That would most likely have to be in person at the courts. You would have to request for that. The following question is, would a case filed against a person, or a case being filed disqualify a person for low income lottery application, Housing Connect?
It shouldn't. It's
Correct.
just the means of, if a person, again, like the reality of what's happening, what actually happens when there's a case that's been filed against you versus what the law is, unfortunately, is very different. So, but it shouldn't. Simply someone filing a case against you is not enough a reason to not rent to you. There are other reasons though. They can say you're not qualified. We don't want to rent you because you don't qualify for it. It's illegal specifically in New York City, but that's only in New York City. Outside of New York City, it may be allowed, it may be legal. So, if you're looking to move upstate or outside of New York State, unfortunately, different states have different rules and laws. In New York City, it's just getting a case filed against you is not enough of a reason for a landlord to deny you. Now, the issue is the landlord going to tell you that? They may say for other reasons, it's hard. But you should, just know that that is illegal. I think I see another question. Can a tenant get a transcript of their court proceedings on the site online? How much would it cost? I don't know if you can get a transcript on this website. That's something I believe you would have to reach out to the court for. I'm not sure how much it would cost. But Nancy did put a link to the help center. Just for anybody. And that's specifically for like the Supreme Court Help Center. Somebody saying there's also an audio record that is supposed to be free. I'm not aware of that, but maybe that person can provide more information about that. I mean, these are public documents. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, looking at it. So this site is specifically free along with eCourts, so you shouldn't need to pay for the basic information on the site. Do we have any other questions?
It looks like that's it, Nipa.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it back over to my colleague Monique, and she's going to finish us off. If anybody has any other questions with either eCourts or NYSCEF, just post it on the chat.
Yes. Thank you, Nipa. That was amazing. Again, I'm Monique, the office manager here at Housing Court Answers. We hold these trainings regularly. We have a training coming up, 2 trainings next week. We're doing a FEPS training on December 14th and City FEPS on December 16th. You can go to our website, housingcourtanswers.org, to register for those. Be sure to check out our YouTube page. Call our hotline with any questions about a personal case, 212-962-4795. And we thank you all for coming. Take care.
And then Monique, did you want to just briefly share the Housing Court trainings page so people can see the upcoming trainings?
You mean share the screen?
Yes.
Hold on. I mean,
because we have some great trainings coming up, so I can share it.
I have it up, but I'm
Okay.
saying they can go to the website, housingcourtanswers.org. I'm going to pull it up now.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is our website. And let me just go to the main page so we can show you how to navigate. You would just click on workshops here. and you see everything we have coming up. Okay, and then we also have a newsletter that you can register for, and you would get the alerts every time we have a training coming up, but definitely check it out. And then all of our trainings are posted on YouTube for life. So if you ever want to revisit anything, that will be there.
Also, sorry, Monique, to interrupt. So we had a recent newsletter that talked about stipulation, which I think is super helpful for tenants. It talks about the component, breaks it down. So I want to share that newsletter with everybody. And you can and it can be very helpful for tenants. So I just want to share that specific newsletter. You can distribute it. Or bookmark it or anything like that. And then also just to let you know, we have it on our page. We also have a YouTube page that has all our past trainings and videos, and this will also be posted there.
Okay, so we'll leave that link there. All right, thank you all again for joining us, and we will see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everybody.
Jess or Nancy, are you here to end?
I think Nancy got kicked off or something happened with the internet.
And then Jessica became the host, but I think she's busy.
Yeah.
Oh, now she's in the waiting room. We didn't see her, Nancy.
Oh,
You can just close it. You don't have to. I'm here.
It just says leave. We don't have the option to close it. That's what I was.
You guys both did a great job. I can close it. Everybody have a lovely day. See you guys around.